Welcome everybody, Steve here. Working on the Project 56 Merc. It's an absolute beautiful day out today. Got the windows open, so we're going to have a little bit of a draft here. And it's time to sand and prep the doors. Now, that's a pretty big job, but take our time and get her done right so we don't have anything to repair. But basically what I want to do is I just want to sand everything and go right to paint. I don't want to have to do any more priming, but that's, to be determined. If there's a scratch or something like that on the other side, there's a good chance we may have to put a little bit of a primer on there, but for the most part, I think we can just go right from sanding to paint and we're good. Now on the inside, I'm going to start there. Now I've got a couple old jackets. Well, if I washed them, they might be good jackets. You never know. Anyway, inside, I'm just going to go straight to 320, and I'm going to use palm sander. We don't have to worry about getting anything perfectly straight here, and it'll be the quickest. There's a lot of little things. I showed you how to clean these guys up here on the last video, if you haven't seen that one. This is where all the bolts for the interior, or for the windows and all that stuff, and they're all dished. So I've already cleaned those up. And now it's just a matter of sanding it, hanging, painting. Let's get at her. Now where the primer is, I put a little bit of a guide coat down. It'll make it a lot easier to see your scratches. Always a little bit of hand sanding where it's tough to get to. But that's okay. The best way to approach that, I find that if you don't press too hard and then you don't gum up your paper as bad, yeah, it seems to go a lot better. We don't have to be real good down here, we just want the primer to be kind of sanded, because we're going to, down on the seam here, we're going to put some seam sealer. But everywhere else has to be good to go. We've got a couple pinholes here we are going to fix. And like I said before, I just use this little red glazing putty. Sands so nice. If you put something on there that's hard to sand, chances are you're going to end up sanding around it and wrecking your finish. And we're just filling little pit holes. Now I have the option here, because I'm going patina, I could leave them and kind of sand where they are, leave a little rough mark or whatever, but there's not very many, so I'm just going to fill. got the inside done. It looks really, really good. So now it's time to tune the outside up. Now what we're going to do here is, you know, if this is a real special paint job, I might just do everything by hand. But I'm getting pretty darn good with a palm sander. Now I'm only going to hit it with 220 with a palm sander. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put another guide coat on, and then I'll finish it off with 320 with the block. And that should get this door pretty darn good. I think it will. I'm confident. Now when we did the 220, I just went and just keep her light. You don't want to really put too much pressure down, and just go until the scratches are just gone, and then now we're going to hit her with the 320. And it actually goes pretty quick after this. If you just go straight to 320 and not do the 220, you're really putting a lot of time in that you don't need to. Now, also, you got to make sure you got a primer for doing that. So a couple of good coats of high build really help out a lot. And if you saw the video on the body work, we made sure that that was really, really good first. You know, a lot of guys, you know, they'll go a little shoddy on their body work, and then they'll go 3 or 4 coats of primer, where we got her really, really good, and then we just have to do 2 coats. So we'll sand her down with the 320 now. And once again, just keep her nice and light. And you'll see when she's all done. That guide coat disappears, and it looks like magic. We're looking good. Just a little bit more to do on the skin. And I think we got the main part of the door done. Alright, we're on to door number 2. There's door number 1. I don't know what's behind there, but it's looking good over there. Same process. Just gonna be a little bit more. This one's got a little bit more body work on it, so it's gonna take a little bit more time. Another really nice day out. Oh, so nice to feel spring in the air. All right, we got a couple scratches down here that just didn't fill in. So what I'm going to do is just use a high build, and works great. They weren't too bad, so I think one application is probably going to be just fine. Yeah, I can't see them. A little spot right here. And that's all we do. So if you need a little spot, I just use a high build. Quite a few different name brands that you can buy. They all work great. Yeah, it's coming along good. Amazing how something so boring can be so exciting for me, eh? But it's exciting when you get to this stage. I love it. But we're just about done. And then we can get on to spraying. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to blow this off really well. We'll get the fan going, and then I'm going to fill in the pinholes. There's a few, not too many. This glaze really quite simple to sand. I'm just using the block with the 320, and you want to just kind of take your time. Now if you're using something a little bit harder, then you'd really have to work it, and then you could start sanding into your primer. That's why you just want to take your time and go nice and light. So along with the doors, we got to make sure that we do these, I guess they're called inner cards or something like that. Just a little panel for the lower part of the door on the inside. Just gonna sandblast probably this. And I'll probably just sand this. That way I can catch any dents. These little covers here, they cover the bolts for the hinges. And of course we've got the hinges. So we'll sandblast all that stuff, get it hung up, because it needs to get painted too. And then also, when you're doing a project, don't forget about the bolts. Unless you want your bolts a different color, you're going to have to paint them as well. Well, we're getting close to spring, but there's one more thing you got to do. So right along in here, really prone to rusting, and if they would have just, you know, put a seam sealer in there, probably would have stopped a lot of it. Now because a lot of it, you know, we buffed it all out, there's going to be some fresh metal in there. So I'm just giving a little shot of primer. I'm just using this one step, kind of an etch primer from Sure Seal. Sure, there's other primers you can use. This is just the one that I have. And then we're going to let that dry. And then we are going to just give it a little bit of a scuff with a scuff cloth because there's some overspray. And you don't really want to be screwing around with sanding or doing anything like that after you've done your seam sealing. Now I know this is everybody's favorite job, but it's not that bad. It's just ugly on the fingers, and you know, you can use a glove, but you just don't have that control unless it's a real tight glove. Got some thinner here. This is an oil base. So instead of putting water or licking your finger, you put a little bit of this. This is just paint thinner, and you get a really nice smooth finish. Let's make sure that we're filming. Yeah, looking good. And don't be putting it on real heavy. Just a nice light coat. Just enough that you know you're going to fill your void. Okay, well, I'm showing my jacket now. Get a little bit more right there. Some of these areas were pitted up pretty bad. But seam sealer will fill those voids up, prevent any more rusting. Looks pretty good. When you're using this thinner, you get that seam sealer looking just like glass. That is the secret to good seam sealing. Why don't we get a close-up? Now typically, what I do is I will put my epoxy primer on the day before I paint, in the evening. And then what I'm doing right now is just giving it a light scuff of 1200 grit. And that gets rid of any little bits of dust or anything like that. And this gives you that much better chance of getting it the way you want it. Done right. Just go in circular motion, nice and light. Does not take much effort at all. Now, before I was using a paintbrush, and that worked fine, but then you're rubbing it with a piece of paper towel. And you can make a nice chisel edge. You just put a little bit of lacquer thinner. And it's a little easier to make a, keep the door from moving. It's a little easier to make a, you know, kind of a scratch. You know what I mean? That looks pretty good. And then if you want something a little bit bigger, you just rub it out with the cloth. And like that. Sometimes you gotta get a new piece of. The nice thing about the paper towel is it picks up all the paint. So you're left with a little darker line there, like it was really scratched well. So. Along the edges where it's always going to be beat up a little bit. Some down below here. Now to mimic a little bit of the sun bleach here, or whatever you want to call that, I'm just using a piece of 320. If you use a power sander like I've done in the past, you can probably do some pretty good damage because you're kind of in a cove here, so Just some 320, and then I'm going to go over it with some 600 grit before I clear coat it. Seems to work pretty good. And this paint is only dried about an hour. The big question with this is, how far do you go? Some people really overdo it. My brother thinks I overdo it. But we gotta make it look pretty original looking. Wanna look like it's old and wore out. Of course, on the inside, you'll get a little wear where the arm is all the time. Just put a little bit in there. Done deal. Now I didn't film any of the clear coat. That's really hard on the camera. So we've got the inside of the doors here. You can see that we've got a little patina going on there. Looks good. Come back to the outside. This is the passenger side. Yeah, not too dinged up. Just kept her looking pretty good. I'm gonna be happy. I also said I was gonna try and get these hung on the truck before I finish this video, but we are waiting on parts. Just like everybody else in the world, we're waiting on, you know, door seals and rubber this and that for all the windows. So hopefully as soon as we get them done, I'll give you a post. Thanks for watching, everybody. Catch up to you on the next one.